Hello and welcome to this Wednesday broadcast of the World Report, viewers. I'm Arjun Samad Mahindra and let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. US President Donald Trump says Venezuela will hand over up to 50 million barrels of oil to the United States. He has announced the deal on his Truth social media account. Now, Trump is claiming, viewers, that between 30 and 50 million barrels of sanctioned Venezuelan oil will now go to the US for sale at marketplace. Now, Trump said that the proceeds will be controlled by his administration. To be specific, Trump posted that the proceeds will be controlled by me. That's not it. They'll also be used to benefit both Venezuelans and Americans, according to Trump's Truth Social post. He ordered his energy secretary to move quickly with the oil to be shipped straight to US docks. However, critics point out that the move comes amid ongoing US military pressure in Venezuela and also raises questions about logistics and raising costs as well. On the other side, Venezuelan interim President Delcy Rodriguez has declared 7 days of mourning on Tuesday in honor of the members of the country's military who died in the US strikes. At least 24 Venezuelan security officers were killed in the operation in capital Caracas. However, Rodriguez did not say when the mourning period will set to begin. Now, the interim president also called for the return of Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, who are currently in US custody at the Metropolitan Detention Center in downtown New York. Meanwhile, listen into what Delcy Rodriguez said.
Aquí no hay guerra, porque nosotros no estamos en guerra. Nosotros somos un pueblo y un país de paz que fuimos agredidos y fuimos atacados. Así que seguiremos por este camino. Todo el pueblo de Venezuela, en unión nacional. Vamos todos, vamos todas a mantenernos firmes, de pie y sobre todo trabajando por nuestro porvenir y trabajando por defender nuestra historia y nuestra dignidad.
US President Donald Trump has been discussing a range of options to acquire Greenland. These include the use of military as well. Who said this? Well, the White House has underlined this. Now, according to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, this includes the possible use of military force as well. That's correct. Donald Trump claims Greenland is a national security priority for Washington, citing growing Arctic competition from Russia and China. Now, viewers, Greenland is a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark and also a fellow NATO partner, making the comments especially sensitive in this case. Meanwhile, European leaders are now rallying right behind Denmark, warning that Greenland's future must and will be decided by its people and international law. Denmark's Prime Minister says any US attack on Greenland would effectively end NATO as we know it. Over the White House, meanwhile, is saying that no decision has been made yet, but officials confirm all options remain on the table, including military options. Greenland's leaders, meanwhile, say that the territory is not for sale, and residents say the rhetoric is alarming. Listen in. Meanwhile,
a fresh chill is sweeping through Europe these days, and it's not just the winter cold. Unease is growing in Denmark after US President Donald Trump once again floated the idea of an American takeover of Greenland, just a day after a dramatic US military operation in Venezuela. Denmark administers Greenland, a vast, mineral-rich Arctic territory that has become strategically critical amid growing global competition. Denmark's PM, Mette Frederiksen, has hit back firmly, saying the US has no right to annex Greenland, and reminded Washington that Denmark already grants extensive US military access under NATO security agreements. The question is, to what extent would NATO allies really support Denmark if this became more than words? Some countries may value good relations with Washington more than defending Denmark. Denmark is a founding member of NATO, and experts warn a US move against a fellow ally would shatter the bloc.
Well, in case of a US military invasion of Greenland, which I think is unlikely still, in that scenario, though, the NATO alliance would, in reality, de facto cease to exist.
On the streets, this belief is turning into anger.
Jamen altså, jeg synes det fuldstændig vanvittigt, det uforskammet faktisk.
The backdrop is crucial. Trump's comments follow the US operation that removed Nicolas Maduro, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio defending America's expanding role in the Western Hemisphere. From Caracas to Copenhagen, from Latin America to the Arctic, Trump's revival of old doctrines is sending shockwaves through allies and adversaries alike. Vishal Vivek for NDTV World.
Well, now we take you across the English Channel straight to Paris, viewers, where the leaders of around 35 countries met to discuss security guarantees for Ukraine and the coalition of the willing. Ukraine's allies agreed to provide Kiev with multi-layered security guarantees aimed at ending the conflict with Russia and soonest. French President Emmanuel Macron, meanwhile, has said that several thousand French soldiers could very well be deployed to Ukraine as a measure to ensure peace. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that ultimate peace requires Russian compromise. Meanwhile, Canada has promised a substantial ongoing commitment to the force that would, in fact, backstop the peace deal. Meanwhile, listen in to Zelensky and UK PM Keir Starmer.
Дуже предметно ми говорили сьогодні з американською командою щодо моніторингу, щоб не було порушень миру. Америка готова працювати щодо цього. Це для нас дуже важливо. Один з найбільш важливих компонентів – це стримування. Це інструменти, які не допустять нової російської агресії, і все це ми бачимо.
But we can only get to a peace deal if Putin is ready to make compromises. And so we have to be frank. For all Russia's words, Putin is not showing that he's ready for peace. Over the last few weeks, we've seen the opposite. Further horrific strikes on Ukraine, killing and wounding civilians.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has described his brutal invasion of neighboring Ukraine as a holy mission to defend Russia in a bizarre address marking Orthodox Christmas. That's correct, viewers. Now, the Russian president called his soldiers warriors who were acting as if at the Lord's behest in a speech that combined militaristic bombast with calls of unity and charity as well. Now, Russia's war against Ukraine has upended the post-World War II peace in Europe and has also led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people and soldiers as well, with still no clear end or even a pathway to point in sight, despite a concerted push for a ceasefire led by US President Donald Trump. Stay with Russia, which has said on Tuesday that its forces shot down hundreds of Ukrainian drones, viewers. Meanwhile, Ukraine on the same day reported carrying out attacks on Russian targets, including a military arsenal. Now, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, Russia's forces struck storage facilities for long-range drones, and they also hit temporary deployment points for Ukrainian armed formations. Ukraine, on the other hand, said that 191 combat engagements had taken place all along the front lines. US President Donald Trump has said Prime Minister Narendra Modi is not that happy with him. Speaking at the House GOP members' retreat, Trump underlined and stated vehemently that the tension is over high US tariffs on India, now totaling a whopping 50%. Not only this, he says those tariffs are linked to India's purchases of Russian oil. At the same time, Trump also stressed that he still has a very good relationship with Modi. He pointed out ongoing cooperation, including US defense sales to India, such as the Apache helicopter deal. Trump said India has begun cutting back on Russian oil imports, but has warned tariffs could rise if US concerns are not met. New Delhi, on its side, has denied making any commitments whatsoever to Washington, and for now, trade pressures remain even as defense ties continue. Meanwhile, here's Trump for you.
India ordered 68 Apaches, and Prime Minister Modi came to see me. Sir, may I see you, please? Yes, I have a very good relationship with him. He's not that happy with me because, you know, they're paying a lot of tariffs now because they're not doing the oil, but they are. They've now reduced it very substantially, as you know, from Russia. We're getting rich because of tariffs, by the way. I hope everyone understands that. They hate to report. We're going to have over $650 billion poured into our country or coming in shortly because of tariffs. You know.
We now shift our gaze to Asia, where Japan has criticized China's decision to ban exports of dual-use goods that can serve both civilian and military purposes to Tokyo. The Chinese Commerce Ministry said in a statement that exports of such items would help enhance Japanese military power are prohibited. Relations between Japan and China worsened late last year. This after Japan's PM Sanae Takaichi said its military could get involved if China were to take action against Taiwan. Meanwhile, we get your reaction.
我が国のみをターゲットにした今般の措置というものは、国際的な慣行と大きく異なり、決して許容できず、極めて遺憾であります。
Staying with the region, Beijing has banned two Taiwanese ministers from entering China for alleged separatist activities related to Taiwan independence. The decision prompted angry response from Taipei, which has said it would not bow down to threats and intimidation from Beijing. Now, the office described Taiwanese Interior Minister and Education Minister as die-hard Taiwan independence secessionists. These ministers and their relatives are banned from entry. The ban also extends to Hong Kong and Macau. Over in the Middle East, viewers, renewed clashes broke out Tuesday between Syrian government forces and Kurdish fighters in a contested area of the northern city of Aleppo. Syrian media said a soldier was killed and 3 others were wounded in an attack by the Kurdish-led and US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces. State TV later, however, reported that 3 civilians, including 2 women, were killed and others were wounded as well. This included 2 children, by the way. The SDF, in a statement, has denied being behind the shelling that killed these civilians. We take you back to Washington now, where during a recent address to Republicans, viewers, Donald Trump candidly discussed various topics, including his wife's disapproval of his imitations of trans athletes in women's sports. He humorously shared that Melania finds his dance imitations unpresidential, asserting that he has become president despite her concerns. Now, Trump, who went candid on a number of issues during his address to Republicans on Tuesday, also joked about how his wife and First Lady Melania hates whenever he imitates trans athletes in women's sports. Here's Donald Trump for you imitating those trans athletes.
And she gets up and they put a little tiny thing like this, little thing. And my wife, by the way, my wife hates when I do this. She said, she's a very classy person, right? She said, it's so unpresidential. I said, but I did become president. She hates when I dance. I said, everybody wants me to dance. Darling, it's not presidential. She actually said, could you imagine FDR dancing? She said that to me. And I said, there's a long history that perhaps she doesn't know. Because he was an elegant fellow, even as a Democrat, right? He was the attack by Japan, he was quite elegant. But he wouldn't be doing this. But nor would too many others. But she says, darling, please, the weightlifting is terrible. And I have to say this, the dancing they really like. She said, they don't like it, they're just being nice to you. I said, that's not right. The place goes crazy. They're screaming, dance, please. But the weightlifting, but no, the girl gets up. And you see, I want to be more, but I have somebody watching. I want to be more effusive. I want to really, But she gets it, and drops the thing, walks off the stage crying. Her mother's crying, her father's crying. Guy gets up. He said, have you lifted before? A little bit. And he walks up. Bing. He could have gone ding, 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 ding. I think it was 112 pounds, right? It's crazy.
Pope Leo XIV on Tuesday closed out the Vatican's 2025 Holy Years, capping a year-long celebration of Christianity that saw some 33 million pilgrims, or faithfuls as they are called, viewers. Now, with cardinals and diplomats looking on, Leo kneeled down in prayer on the stone floor at the very threshold of the holy door of St. Peter's Basilica. He then stood up and pulled out the 2 doors shut, symbolically closing out the rarest of jubilees, as one was opened by a feeble Pope Francis in 2024. Only once before, by the way, in 1700, has a holy year been opened by one Pope and closed by another. Over in Asia, Malaysia's former Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad was admitted to hospital on Tuesday. According to his aide, Mahathir suffered a fall in the morning and required medical attention and observation at the National Heart Institute in Kuala Lumpur. The 100-year-old former leader has been in and out of hospital and has had a history of heart ailments. He is one of the world's oldest living former heads of state. For perspective. Moving eastwards, China's ice and snow tourism is entering a new stage of sustained prosperity. Now, a record high 14,075 related enterprises operated in the sector by the end of 2025. Now, reports attributed the scale to a surge in innovation tourism products, including ice sculpting, ice and snow photography, and also themed experiences across China. The country is positioning the ice and snow economy as a key driver of development and consumption alike. The scale, by the way, is expected to reach a whopping 1.2 trillion yuan only by 2027. That's not too far next year. Thousands of Orthodox Christians in white traditional attire celebrated Christmas Eve with a mass, prayers and hymns during a candlelight ceremony in Ethiopia's capital. The public spectacle on Tuesday evening was followed by all-night church service, marking the end of a 43-day fasting season. Ethiopian Orthodox Church Christians follow the Julian calendar, which in fact runs 13 days later than the Gregorian calendar. Now, they traditionally celebrate Christmas by slaughtering animals and joining family members to break the fast after midnight. Here's more.
The concept of Christianity is based on Jesus Christ, which is the one who preached us the happiness, the desire of peace and equality for all human beings. So we have to follow that if we want to have a peace in the whole worldwide, so that we have to follow the preacher of Jesus Christ.
Roman Catholics dressed in colorful costumes and danced to the sounds of drums paraded through the streets of Rio de Janeiro as part of celebrations marking the Three Kings Day. Members of the Bright Star Bethlehem group viewers took part in the vibrant procession containing traditional Catholic symbols, also mixed with symbols from Afro-Brazilian culture. Now, Three Kings Day is also known as the Feast Day of Epiphany, is observed each day on the 6th of January and recalls the visit of the Three Kings to baby Jesus.
Que é uma folia de Reis Mirim, porque através da criança que vem a renovação, né? E através da folia a gente também consegue usar um poder chamado educacional. Então, mostrar para eles que existem outros caminhos, né? Do bem, que não o caminho do tráfico, não o caminho da droga. E a folia é cultura, e além deles estarem iniciados no saber histórico e cultural da folia, eles também possam estar iniciados na sua vida. Tanto homens e mulheres, estão fazendo com que a folia faça com que eles sejam homens e mulheres do bem.
Well, with that, it's time we step into a short break. Viewers, news continues on the other side. Don't you go anywhere. Welcome back, viewers. Lenovo Group's Motorola unveiled its fast folding phone that also opens like a book or a passport, if you may. Now, this move marks a departure from the string of clamshell-style foldables that the brand has released over the past several years together now. Now, the device is called the Razr Fold, though its iteration doesn't bear any resemblance to Motorola's once iconic handset. Lenovo showed off the device during a flashy keynote at the Consumer Electronics Show, alongside a range of new products as well. Now, with this announcement, Motorola is making a late entrance into a relatively established segment. In the world of sports, Neymar has agreed to extend his contract with Santos until the end of 2026. Now, this comes as he maintains hopes of a World Cup call-up despite recent injuries. The 33-year-old forward returned to Santos in January last year and played a key role by scoring 5 times in their last 5 matches. Neymar, who's long in fact struggled with injuries, underwent successful arthroscopic surgery on his right knee last month. Brazil's all-time top scorer with 79 goals has not featured for the 5-time World Cup winners since 2023. In the world of entertainment, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban are now divorced and legally single. That's true. A national judge on Tuesday has issued an order dissolving the 19-year-long marriage of Oscar-winning actor and the Grammy-winning country singer. The judge said that the couple's settlements on splitting assets and child custody are sufficient and granted them divorce. Kidman filed for divorce in September last year. Now, all the legal issues involving assets and custody had already been settled and signed the day after her filing. After just 2.5 weeks of release, the Sydney Sweeney box office hit The Housemaid is getting a sequel. No surprises there if you ask me. Lionsgate announced Tuesday that it will start production on The Housemaid's Secret later this year. Now, the film will be based on the second of Frida McFadden's best-selling trilogy of books. The Housemaid has been a hit at the holiday box office, grossing more than $75 million domestically and a whopping $133 million worldwide. And well, that's all the reports we have for you this Wednesday afternoon. Take care and have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.